We're reading Psalms today, quite a number of them, and but kind of going back to the beginning of Psalms. So we're starting with like earlier Psalms. Now that we've looked at some of the Psalms that David wrote during his time of trial. So we'll start with Psalm 6, which was written by David as a prayer of faith in the time of distress. It's one of those, so there are classes of Psalms. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but this is apparently one of the seven penitential psalms of the ancient church, which are prayers centering upon the nature of sin and forgiveness. David appealed to God for mercy because he was troubled, and some theologians believe that his troubles were directly connected to his sin, so his plea for healing was one of forgiveness. We don't know for sure, but he didn't, in this instance, assert innocence, which was one of the things that probably made people feel like, it had something to do with the fact that his hands weren't clean. But rather, he appealed to God's gracious nature for forgiveness, and the mood at the end confirmed forgiveness and victory from God. Psalm 8 is a psalm of enthronement, right? So this is one of those psalms that sort of exalts God's majesty. So for this one is exalting the majestic name of the Lord. The focus is on man as God's creation, his worth and dignity as those created in his image and his likeness. Psalm 9 is a prayer and a thanksgiving for the Lord's righteous judgment. And 10, a song of confidence in God's triumph over evil. And they are both closely related in form and language, and they're actually considered as one psalm, but because of the length, they were broken into two. They both express confidence in God's victory over evil. In Psalm 9, verse 10, it says, "And those who know your name will put their trust in you." To know means a personal and intimate relationship and knowledge of God. And those who have this experience in the Lord's protection during troubled times are sure that God is in it and he will see them through. David encourages us to sing praises to the Lord in spite of anything that we're going through. So in that thing, in all situations, give thanks and praise. That's what it reminded me of. In Psalm 10, we see the characteristics of the wicked who do not reverence the Lord. But in 10:17, God encourages the afflicted and listens to their cries and defends the fatherless and the oppressed. Psalm 14, here David speaks on the folly of the godless and God's final triumph. So this was a psalm where we heard, basically what I took away is only a fool will say there is no God. I know this isn't where it was said, but yeah. A foolish person lacks wisdom, lacks spiritual discernment, not necessarily intelligence, because some intelligent people are that, but they don't, they're not knowledgeable in the things that matter. We all know some people, we all know some pretty smart people who are atheists, who are smart, but they just don't believe in God. But denying the existence of God and living like he doesn't exist is foolishness, like it or not. The opposite of this, actually, is steadfast devotion to the Lord. In the New Testament, Paul uses Psalm 14 to emphasize that we are all foolish as long as we choose to separate ourselves from the wisdom of God found in the gospel of Christ. 1 Corinthians 1:15-25 says, "For the message of the gospel of the cross, actually, is foolishness to those who are perishing, but for us who are being saved, it is the power of God." He then quotes Isaiah 29:14, "I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent." Now, all this just goes to show how truly foolishness is denying the existence of God, or trying to justify things from facts instead of from, what I will say is reason, or reason that comes through faith. David ends the psalm by proclaiming that salvation will come out of Zion, and spoke of rejoicing when the Lord restores the fortune of the people. God answered with a yes. In Psalm 16, 9 to 11, David prophesied about Christ's death and resurrection, and we've seen this happen before. In some of the past Psalms, there are some certain lines, that just always, that obviously, if you'd know he was speaking, of the coming king. In Psalm 17, David was confident in God's protection, trusting in his keeping power. And finally, in Psalm 21, obviously was a plea for safety and power over victory. So God doesn't grant every desire of our heart, but he doesn't withhold the desires that are aligned with his purpose for our lives. Now that was very powerful, and that's actually what led to my hashtag getting to know God moment. There's joy in God's presence. In Psalm 16:11, it says, "You've made known to me the path of life. You fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures out of your right hand." Now, when I read this, I felt like it could be viewed from David's point of view, saying, "Oh, this is what the Lord has done," but also from Christ. Because remember, Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father, and in him we have joy and we have all good things. So that gave me a kind of different perspective, and I was very glad to see it from that way. And I hope you learned some things about God and saw Jesus in these Psalms as well. So tomorrow we'll be jumping to the Book of Chronicles. I know right now it seems as if we're just jumping around, but like I said, it really is to get things in perspective as chronologically as possible. So the Book of Chronicles, really, that's what it is, chronicling the Israelites, from now, the kingdoms. And so it's very, very heavily focused on David, and the Chronicles mostly will be genealogies and a summary of everything. So prepare your heart for some repetition, but also some new information as well. So I look forward to seeing you here tomorrow, where I'll be sharing lessons from 1 Chronicles 1 to 2. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Bye.